appropriately raised. First of all, I never compared the reality of what is going on in Gaza to the Holocaust. What I did say was that the kinds of collective punishment that are being imposed on the entire people of Gaza have a resemblance to collective punishment that was imposed by the Nazis in Germany, and that if this kind of circumstance is allowed to persist, it could produce a Holocaust. I never suggested that what was happening was a Holocaust. Same thing with the existence of crimes against humanity. I merely tried to characterize the facts as I understood them to involve this kind of massive collective punishment of every man, woman, and child, regardless of their activities, as being victimized by a set of policies summarized as a siege or blockade, where some of the effects are now very well established, such as 46% of Gazan children are suffering from acute anemia. Very stark reality. More than 80% are living under the level of poverty. So I return to the main point. I think that my whole life has been devoted, I think, to trying to tell the truth about facts that are often unpleasant. Unpleasant for me to address. I really have sought, in relation to the Israel-Palestine conflict, peace and justice for both peoples, and I've always had that view that it was possible, desirable, and necessary. And that's the basis on which I've acted throughout this period as Special Rapporteur for the UN.
Professor Falk, the New York Times had a piece called UN Rights Investigator Expelled by Israel, not exactly what I would call sympathetic to you. I just wanted to read one quote from that article. It says, Richard Falk has compared Israel's treatment of Palestinians to Nazi atrocities and has called for a more serious examination of the conspiracy theories surrounding the September 11th attacks, pointing to discrepancies between the official version of events and other versions. He recently wrote that only willful ignorance can maintain that the 9/11 narrative should be treated as a closed book. Your response?
Yeah, well, that's part of this whole effort to shift the focus to me and away from the reality, and at the same time to somehow paint me as some kind of conspiracy person or theorist, which is absolutely untrue. What is true is that I wrote the forward to the original book of David Griffin, a longtime friend of mine, which is the most prominent challenge to the validity of the official version of 9/11. And I continue to hold the view that the 9/11 Commission did not adequately address the difficult questions about what happened on 9/11 that he raised. But I haven't ever, and do not now, endorse any kind of conspiracy theory. All I think is true is that the American people and the world deserve a fuller and more credible investigation of those events.
In December of 2006, Israel blocked the South African Archbishop and Nobel laureate Desmond Tutu from investigating the killing of 19 Palestinians in Gaza. He had a UN mandate to head a fact-finding mission to Gaza, like you did, but Israeli officials failed to grant him the necessary travel visas, saying the mission, quote, advances a biased anti-Israel agenda.
The lack of cooperation by the Israeli government, very distressing, as well as its failure to allow the mission timely passage to Israel. This is a time in our history that neither allows for indifference to the plight of those suffering, nor a refusal to search for a solution to the present crisis in the region.
I asked the Archbishop Tutu, about this when I interviewed him a few weeks ago. You were blocked from going into Gaza in 2006, leading a UN delegation there after the killing of a number of Palestinians. What do you think has to be done now with the Middle East, specifically with Israel and the occupation?
There's been some very interesting moves with the outgoing Prime Minister suggesting that Israel has to consider very seriously the proposal of going back to the boundaries of 1967. That's a very important initiative if that was taken. I think that we would have to move very quickly to lifting the embargo. The suffering is unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable. It doesn't promote the security of Israel or any other part of that very volatile region.
That's Archbishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa just a few weeks ago here in New York. Of course, it was not only Tutu, not only you, Professor Falk, but news organizations writing a letter of protest to the Israeli Prime Minister, CNN, BBC, Reuters, New York Times, AP, for not being allowed into Gaza. What are you calling for right now as you return home, having been deported from Israel?
Well, mainly access for myself. I think my resignation would be giving in to Israel's unreasonable behavior. And as I say, part of this broader pattern that Archbishop Tutu's exclusion further confirms. And incidentally, I didn't respond to your question about Hamas. That is an absolutely untrue statement. I've condemned the firing of rockets at civilians.
And Professor Falk, we just have 5 seconds, so your final comment.
My final comment is that it's important for the peace of the region that the facts of this occupation are widely known.
We leave it there. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amy Goodman.